meeting of the APCHA board. Cindy, do you want to call the roll?
I'd love to. Carson.
Here.
Allison.
Here.
Rachel.
Here.
John.
Present.
Kelly.
Here.
And Skippy and Francie are out. Thank you.
Okay. We'll move to public comment. Is there anyone with public comment? It is. If you'd like to just come on up here over to the corner of the microphone. And if you would, just identify yourself and public comments, or have a 3-minute time limit.
Welcome.
Hi, Rachel. My name is Susan Welsh, and I live here in Aspen. I've been here almost 33 years. I like what Aspen has done, and it's by far the best ski resort area that has for employee housing. And I think that's great, because I also have been to New Zealand a lot, and they have problems along with a lot of these other places here. But what I'm worried about is that we have, I think, over 3,000 employee units. How many of those units are being used for employees who are working today?
I think.
Does anybody know that?
Yeah,
We hope 100%, but we have some retirees that aren't working, right?
Yeah. Red is on. We had a home trek report not long ago, and I can't quote it exactly, but I think there's about 140 people who are fully retired and 90 people who are partially retired. And you cannot retire in your unit unless you have worked 35 years in the community consecutively before that retirement, or
5 years?
35 years, or have reached full Social Security retirement age, which is either 67 or 68, depending on when you were born. I will say that the Aspen Area Community Plan, the oldest one, had predicted there'd be 850 people retired in their units by now, and it has not come to pass at all with 150. I would also point out that of the 3,200 units, a great many of them have been preservation units, whether it was Aspen Village, Smuggler Mobile Home Park, Woody Creek Mobile Home Park, Lazy Glen Woody Mobile Home Park, Aspen Village, some of the units at Hunter Creek. So not all of those were new construction, as it were.
So are you saying that, so Aspen Village at one time was employee housing or affordable?
It is employee housing now. It was always de facto free market space rent affordable housing, but now it has been preserved, and those owners are able to own their land.
Well, this is what brought me here today.
Okay.
Is that yesterday, I'm in a free market, and yesterday I received this, and it's a listing at the Smuggler Park, and it's $2.2 million.
Yes.
And so I thought, because I was just there not too long ago taking someone home, that was employee housing or affordable housing at one time.
Yes.
But something's happened here.
Well, Smuggler was one of the first mobile home parks that was saved, and it was well before my time, so I don't know all the details. But it is resident occupied, and so they have to be a resident of Aspen to live there. But there is no price control on how much a resident would be willing to pay to live there.
And there's not a work requirement either.
Yeah.
They just have to use it as their primary residence.
There's also a vacant lot for sale for 1.7.
I can believe that.
So I guess this is what's bothering me a little bit. It seems that the city is always building more employee housing or affordable housing, hundreds of it. And it just keeps, since I've been here, it's the population has grown considerably. And most of that really is from affordable housing. And so how does it get so out of proportion that people can sell for $2.2 million? It just seems like it's a little.
I think you'd have to go back well over 30 years to whoever the Board of County Commissioners were at that time, and they placed those deed restrictions on that project in order to try to save it from becoming entirely a free market project.
Okay.
But I can't answer to why they made those choices.
Some of that answer is there's a full segment of population that serves, works in Aspen, right?
Yeah.
There's professionals that make more income than some of the income caps we have today, but they can't afford a $6-7 million house on Cemetery Lane somewhere. But they end up in a resident occupied, which requires you to work in Aspen. You have certain asset cap limits, but your income is not capped. So prices go up. That one, good luck if they get that number, 2.2.
Yeah.
But there's other areas in town, other homes in town that have certain price points based upon the resident occupancy, or based upon how much it costs to build, and then the continued appreciation at 3 or 4% from the time it was built.
Yeah. And one other thing to kind of add on is deed restrictions have been improved since day one. We're all still dealing, I have a 30-year-old deed restriction because I've lived in my unit over 30 years. But the modern deed restrictions are much tighter about that. And the city hasn't, or the APCHA hasn't created RO units. Those have been conversion units that were saved, and it's always a difficult balance because the person has already bought their mobile home and they've been paying for it for years, even if they've been in a space rent situation. But I would say that Aspen has never produced, through its housing, its entire workforce needs. We've always had a goal of 60 to 65% of our workforce, but we've always depended on a 60 to 65% to come from down valley in the free market. And if you haven't seen what their prices have done,
I know.
that's what's happened to our workforce.
I don't feel that I've gotten that you had the chance to make your statement yet, I guess.
Well, I just feel I received something like this in the mail. I live at Obermeyer Place, and I know when I was on the waiting list when it first came available, and there were 22 affordable housing units and 18 free market. So I had my appointment at 10 a.m. and went down there, and of course they were all gone, the free market, and so were all the affordable housing. So I had to wait for 3.5 years for one to come available. But because I'm paying for free market. But it just seems like, because I have friends over there at the Smuggler Park, and it really looks sort of crappy, to tell you the truth, because there are all these cars, tons of cars. It seems like the smaller the unit, the more cars, for some reason. And then I get this in the mail yesterday, and I thought, I wonder if you all are doing the job that, because it doesn't look good for people who are reading these things. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say, and I know that, as Rachel knows, I've been trying to push the Armory to come back to the locals. I've been working on that for 4 years so that we can have affordable eats in there, affordable kiosks that the local could have their own little entrepreneurial things in a little marketplace. And yet everything goes, they don't have money to do that, to bring that back, but to the public, but they have money for affordable housing. So it's just something that I thought I'd ask you all, and I'm glad to hear that, Rachel, that you all are doing a better job, because for those of us who have to pay full market price, and then you see something like, which I thought was affordable housing for 2.2, it seems like it's a little out of whack. But
I would caution a little bit about what the data shows about the population increases, because from the 2000 census to the 2020 census, the actual resident population has grown by about 3,000, which over 20 years, I don't think that's where we're feeling the population growth, because, over 60% of the actual housing units in Pitkin County are vacant most of the time. We're experiencing those as full now. So they're not residents, they've not declared their residency here to actually increase the population by huge amounts, but it's felt that way. Yeah. And we didn't build those 3,000 housing units in the last 20 years. So it's not it's not affordable housing that's necessarily contributing to the feeling of more people here, because the numbers aren't bearing that out, actually.
okay.
And I think I would just add to what Kelly said. I mean, I think we've got a couple of things going on, right? So certainly we have some retirees, right, living in the units, but I think also a number of properties that for years effectively operated as free market affordable housing. A lot of those have been redeveloped, right? And at the last meeting, we had the city planning department in here to talk about, how do we try and incentivize people to not develop those into single-family homes. If you've got a non-conforming use that's 10 units and it could go back to a single-family home, how do you incentivize someone to say that should stay 10 units, not one, right? And then short-term rentals, we've seen the impact. I mean, when in the 18 years I've been here, the first 3 places I lived in when I moved to town, they're all short-term rentals, and right, we've seen the elected officials trying to take that on. So, appreciate you coming in, and very much we're doing everything we can to try and address what is clearly a big problem.
May I add one more thing I think
course.
that maybe you as a board should think about? For years, I took out as a volunteer these women at the senior center, 3 different ones, and I could tell you their names and all. And when they became too ill to stay at the senior center, which are 13 rooms, they had to be sent down to either Glenwood or Grand Junction. I thought that was incredible. In fact, I had written my will to leave everything I owned to have something near the hospital where these people, because all of their friends couldn't drive anymore. They were in their late 80s and 90s, and anyway, it's just something, but no, all of that went for affordable housing. And I tried to pitch it because it was near the hospital, because of these 3 old ladies that I was taking out. But anyway, that's something I think maybe you might consider. You all are going to get older, and then you won't be quite feeling like it should all go for affordable housing. You might think about some of these old people, because you all could be living here then. And if you're sent off, all your friends are still here.
Yeah.
Just a thought. So I won't take any more of your time. But
I
thank
will
you for-
say the county, Pitkin County and Eagle County are in talks with the Forest Service about a Mid-Valley land that the Forest Service is trying to sell, and we have right of first refusal.
Oh, good.
And what Eagle County has done in an assessment is shown that senior housing is one of the more desirable uses for that, and so in partnership, we're having those conversations.
You're talking.
So not
assisted
right in
living.
Pitkin County, but.
Yeah, I know, and
yeah.
I have followed that a little bit.
Yeah,
but
and
Thank you.
so,
So,
yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for
Nice
letting
to
me
meet
talk.
you.
Thanks for
Yeah,
coming
no,
in.
thank
gonna-
you for coming in.
Okay, well, thank you, Richard.
We're all struggling with the same dilemma.
I know you are. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to Board of Directors comments, and Kelly, we'll start with you.
I'm not sure my thoughts are clear right now. I will say, Matthew, and I'm not sure if other staff are coming to meet with the Board of County Commissioners next Tuesday. And I'm hoping that the result of that is just some clarity for the BOCC around how, APCHA qualifications work and what the compliance system is doing. Because I do think that there is some of that concern that people are cheating the system, that we are housing workers who work remotely, and all things that I really think can be debunked, and this is an opportunity to have that conversation. So it's only an hour. I'm sure we could take up a whole day, but I look forward to that, and thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Rachel?
The city has placed the short-term rental ballot question on the November ballot. It has been decided to be a 5% tax for owner-occupied units, people who reside in their unit. They are a resident of Aspen, and they can rent for up to 6 months a year, but they need to reside here for 6 months and 1 day to qualify as a resident. That would be a 5% tax. The lodge exempt units, which are what we would call the condo hotels, they have certain features that make them qualify for that, such as the Gant or the Alps, and their rate would also be at a 5%. We have noted that those are properties that pay a residential property tax rate, although they function as a commercial lodge. And just for background, we did poll at 13.4% tax, which would, across the board, have accommodated the mitigation that would have been paid for housing, as well as a commercial property tax rate. But we are not asking that. Those both polled well to succeed and pass, and had a lot of community support. There certainly is a hardcore 35% that were no at any rate whatsoever. And then homes that are purchased in residential neighborhoods that are not owned by a resident, that are out-of-state ownership with or not resident ownership, whether LLC or out-of-state, their rental rate tax for short-term rentals would be 10%. Now, again, anyone can rent long-term, and there would be no tax. That's state law at over 30 days. John?
So real quick, you talked about condotels, the Gantt, Square, whatever. Those aren't taxed at kind of a lodging? I thought the lodging tax was like 20-some% total.
No.
I didn't know
The
that.
lodging, ACRA, the lodging tax is 2%, is it? And 0.5% goes to transportation, so 1.5% goes to ACRA?
Well, and just
Go
in
to the city for
comparison, how's like
marketing,
a hotel, like the Limelight,
Yeah.
what's the tax on the bill look like
Um,
in comparison to, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm all
yeah,
for this,
yeah,
trying to bring it
no.
all kind of closer together.
True lodges pay a commercial property tax rate. So the Limelight pays a commercial property tax rate, or the Hotel Aspen
Which is
on
a
Main
higher
Street.
tax rate than a residential rate.
Yes, it is roughly 3 times higher than a residential property tax rate. It's an awkward situation that's developed over many, many years, that we have properties that are used as commercial activities, renting up to 52 weeks a year, and at a residential property tax rate. This shorts a number of different services, whether it's the ambulance district, or whether it's a school district, or maybe the fire district, who are receiving residential property tax rates from commercial properties. Again, the rates that we are looking at asking do not correlate or reflect that. A 13.4% rate would reflect that. But,
Well, I was in
but-
support of increasing it to that.
But yours is a sales
Across
tax,
the
not
board,
a property tax.
to make it
I
look
think
Sales tax,
that's
it is a
like
sales
12
tax.
something
For,
all told in
yeah.
your bill.
Because
Yeah.
residential, the rentals were getting, as a 1 to 4 family home, single family home, you were getting a better, advantage over, the competing Limelight Hotel down the street. I'm surprised that, like, Aspen Square, which is truly, that should be a rental property that people come and go from. I didn't realize that they were taxed at a residential rate.
So, and even like the Hotel Jerome, because they have those condos across the street, the only portions that are taxed commercial are the lobby, the restaurant, and the rest of it is all assessed residential.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is
Um,
inequitable.
So, at any rate, just to inform you that it is on the ballot, and there'll be a lot of pros and cons, I think, put forward. The ballot question will allocate specifically 70% of the revenues towards affordable housing as a minimum, and the other 30% can be used for city infrastructure and environmental initiatives. Although, again, the 70% is a minimum, we could, in any given year, use up to 100%
Is
of
there a
that.
projection of how much you generate?
I don't have that at hand. I think there will be within the ballot language, but it's been a little hard to fully estimate because the people coming in for their permits are just now, as opposed to the ones who are grandfathered, and determining which will be which rates. And also not really knowing if someone gets a owner occupied and they only rent it for 2 weeks when they go away for Christmas, you can't assume they're gonna rent for 6 months, or you can't assume they're gonna rent for 3 months, So it's been very hard to make an accurate projection. Our finance department's been working on it. I know that when we were at the 13.4 polling number, they were coming up with close to $9 million.
That's what's on the ballot. We have
Is
the
that-
full language on our website, 9.14 for the first year, and then whatever it collects after that.
Well,
Okay.
Did the 70%, is that something that would go to to APCHA, to the cities? What
It would
does
go to
for
the
housing mean?
Well, it would go through the city for housing. Our fund, where the same rent money goes into, the 150 fund or 155 fund. That is the fund in which we pay for APCHA support out of it, as well as all the other activities. Primarily construction is what I would say, or buy downs or things like that if those are available. Concurrent with that, as a city, we've been looking at a very severe shortage for childcare spaces and childcare facilities. Well, because of the affordable housing shortage, I think we all feel that it would be very hard to fully staff any new childcare facilities, as opposed to being able to retain the teachers that we have now, which is a struggle. So we did review some proposals coming from the Kids First Board, which is ways to assure retention of the current teachers and perhaps entice a few more into the field. But part of that discussion is the 0.45 cent affordable housing / childcare sales tax that the city has. That was not passed with a fixed ratio in the ballot question. It just said it was for those two purposes. And the ratio, I think, originally was at a 50-50. Past councils, I was not a part of, changed that, I think, to 45-55. And given the extent of the child care needs, our council has committed to take that to 75-25. So 75% will go towards child care needs, 25% towards affordable housing, continuing. I would say that the Kids First Board wanted us to go to 90-10, and I think there's still some lobbying behind that, but I don't know that it will change that much. But there is a point at which losing all the remaining child care workers because of the low wages and not able to compete with the wages we're seeing in a great many other areas, and having that as an obligation to care for and as a part of supporting our workforce. Council felt that, the money difference might equal 1.5 units every year, or we could put it into the child care program where we know we need it now. And so that it's a tough choice. Hopefully the short-term rental will pass, and that will help us balance the two up. And I understand from having talked to John Peacock quite a while ago, the county doesn't feel it can ask for a short-term rental tax.
We haven't talked about it.
Well,
I think
John seemed to think it wasn't allowed in the charter or whatever, your powers as a county, but that was quite a while ago. So I don't know if we'll see additional support.
So, Rachel, real quick, I'm sorry to comment on this, but what about, it feels like, and maybe I'm stereotyping, so slap me down if I am, but childcare workers. I can remember when my kids were going to Wildwood and going somewhere else, most of those childcare workers were 20-year-old, and I'm going to say this is probably wrong too, females, right? What about creating more rental housing with options and priorities for people for specific jobs like that? Because they're not buyers.
No,
They're not
I know.
buyers at Burlingame. They're not buyers at the lumberyard. They are based on income and savings. Probably
Yeah.
they're renters.
The city is discussing that shift, being able to use some of that money to help secure housing for the child care workers. But in terms of the funding for housing that comes from the RET or from mitigation of new growth, that would go to the general lottery and everything like that. I'm really not sure we will find something to buy down or to be able to do that, but there is that hope that we can secure housing with the housing daycare tax that would be housing for daycare workers, as well as the other support the program needs.
I'm even just plan units in the process, right? And the two I talked about, what about just saying we're going to turn 10 of them into rentals?
Well, the zoning at Burlingame would not allow for rentals. The zoning at Burlingame, which are the only units coming online anytime soon, are ownership only. It is not a rental project. At the lumberyard,
You
that's...
guys write the zoning.
The homeowners in the other two sections have to agree 100% with that, not a single change. So it's not as easily done as one might think. But certainly with the design on the lumberyard, which is going to be more for potentially smaller units and less 3 bedrooms and family units. And that's being planned as rental. The first phase would be possible.
I'm just trying to throw out ideas as much as anything.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and we appreciate ideas.
I mean, the county's put aside, half of our ARPA funds, which is $1.5 million, to shore up the childcare system. And we're getting a report on it. I don't know what the conversations have been like, but staff has been interviewing all the providers about the best ways to sort of secure those. And the conversations have been around staff, so I don't know if something like like offering rentals or, first-time homebuyer assistance targeted towards, we have a lot of flexibility in what we can do with that money, right? It's targeted towards industries that were really affected negatively by the pandemic, and so it falls into that. So once I hear back on what they're learning, I can come back and let you guys know if that would help. But I think that that's really what it's targeted, and obviously housing has been the issue, hiring has been the issue. So I expect that the solutions that are going to be presented to use that funding for are going to be targeted towards resolving those,
Yeah.
at least partially.
I mean, I don't want to delay this meeting any further, but one of the suggestions coming from the Kids First Board was a $500 a month bonus to every child care worker ongoing. And do that over a period of time while the child care facilities raise their rates to be able to pay that themselves. But I can't remember if it was a $400,000 or $600,000 hit a year just to be able to keep these people going. And, I've already told this board, but City Market's telling all their workers, just hang on into November. You'll get that bonus pay. We'll start paying you $2 or $3 more an hour just to stay through the winter. And that's what's happening, I think, across the board for the workforce.
Well, I'm seeing where they're trying to lock up rental housing down Valley,
Yeah.
corporate-wide, for Kroger is. I know that for a
Yeah,
fact.
I know that too. But I don't think the manager meant to tell me.
Thanks, Rachel. Allison?
Couple things. I would like to echo Kelly's comments about the narrative of the population growing. She has it memorized. I had to look up census data as Susan was talking, but we've held steady at 17,000 for the county over the last 10 years. 20 years ago it was 14,000, so she is absolutely right.
I looked it up as well.
Oh,
Don't give me more
speedier.
credit than this too.
You have this memorized. That's population growth 3,000. So I don't know exactly where that narrative is coming from, that Aspen is getting more and more people, and it's all the workforce.
Right.
Because there's also this gutted feeling that you don't pass anyone that is in the community anymore when you walk down the street. So I want to push back incredibly hard on that, because it's not true based on facts. It's not true based on feeling, and it is a narrative that's out there that every time I hear it, I think you might as well at least say the opposite until it becomes neutral, and then the truth comes out, if we can say it a little bit more. I also really can't stand the narrative of it got bigger since I got here. I think that's a pretty common statement, and I have so much respect for everyone who kept this place a paradise before I got here, but I don't think that once any given person in any different generation, freshman class, gets here, that then Aspen is the right population, and anything from then is too crowded. So both of those things are pretty personally attacking, I think, especially to our workforce, and I feel compelled to stand up for. Though I think Susan did a great job of pointing out that affordable housing is untenable for a lot of people in this town. So that was a great case in point. We have $2 million affordable housing. What else can we do? What else can we build and buy down and bring to make this a community, which is APCHA's, as we know, are.
But my argument to that was that $2 million trailer is still affordable housing
For somebody.
To somebody.
for somebody.
Yes,
because
yes.
That's a $6-8 million.
It's hugely subsidized, right? Yes, I agree. And it hasn't sold, so we don't know.
But you
Like,
don't know
the
what's gonna
price
sell
of an RO doesn't mean that's, the value, like, it's whatever it sells for. I guess
whatever it sells
more
for.
like the free market. But
okay.
can a full-time person, 6 months in a day, afford that? I don't know.
They don't have to even work in Pitkin County.
Great, so,
So if the first 4 months it's for sale, They
Oh,
have to
right.
sell to a qualified Pitkin County employee. After after those 4 months, as long as the owner lives in it at least 6 months and 1 day, it's their primary residence. That's
Is it a
it.
strategy then? Do they usually price it pretty high? Or sorry, yeah, pretty high, so that first 4 months,
This is the
no
highest that I've
worker
seen them in
get
a
it.
long, any of them in a long time. Usually, because I know some employees that have been in our lottery that, there's been a couple of years that were able to buy one or two of them, a couple of them, and they were able to buy of them.
Great.
So they were more
Yeah.
reasonably priced. It's changing. But again, it sunsets.
I know.
That deed restriction sunsets in 2037.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's important information. So those were not pre-planned notes. That's just a little pedestal I hopped on for a moment. Rachel, I really appreciate the updates from City Council. I realize you guys go and update council about APCHA board, so felt great to hear the opposite side so that we can all keep up, as well as the prioritizing workers. I do think that workers are more important than space that's what we're hearing in the business community as well, that there are the facilities, the physical spaces there, and so what can we do to get the staffing there for our children in the area? So that's great to hear. I have another question, Cindy, I guess for you. So our Truscott units that are open, the 2-bedroom rentals that are open right now, the way it's listed on our website is you can make 56,000 something max / 2-person. Combined, the 2 people can make that, or each?
Combined.
So that, and this is like 60% AMI. What are these properties?
Yes, T2 is 60% AMI.
So does that mean that someone has assigned AMI to Pitkin County around like 40 grand, 45 grand a year?
I have to look at the
It's
sheet.
about 70,000 for a single.
A single.
For 100% AMI.
So, and these are supposed to,
74.
so, okay, if something's 56,000 for 2, that means each one is making under 30, right? 28 something. And 28 is supposed to be 60% of AMI. So that's not
The
60
the 56,000 should be the 60% of the AMI.
of a 2-person combined
That's for a
AMI.
2-person household.
I mean,
Yeah.
it just, again, I know you already know this, but that sounds so wrong. There's no way our median is.
You know, all I know is that these numbers come from HUD,
Right.
and that's what that is for a 2-person household with Truscott, and when T2 got approved, it was also under a different income tax credit program called HERA, and HERA is even higher than what an actual ACI is less than that. Of course, ACI is 50% AMI.
Okay.
So it's actually, you can make it even a little bit more here, but I agree. It seems really, really low.
Yeah.
And you either need a single parent,
Exactly. Or
and that's really what you need is a single parent.
or a non-working parent. Can 2 people
Yes, if they
one
have a
person's
child.
working-
Right.
If they have a child, it can be a 3-person household that lives in the 2-bedroom.
Right.
And only one, you can be a parent, 2 parents and 1 parent does not work.
Or doesn't work for in town or.
It doesn't work, again, if they work someplace else, their
Oh, they're gonna
income
be
is gonna
over,
be
of
added to
course,
it, so
of
they're
course,
probably
yeah.
gonna be over.
Okay.
But if you have one of the parents that doesn't work, you can put 3 people in our 2-bedroom.
And the HUD AMIs are coming from reported wages, and then it's averaged or medianed, or where are they getting?
I would have, I don't know. I really don't know.
It just sounds like maybe a ton of people report 0 earnings or something. Like, it's just so off, and those empty bedrooms are killing me. As
Yeah.
I
Oh,
get
believe
texts
me,
daily, that
it
people need
kills
housing.
us. We try,
I'm
I
sure.
can't tell you how hard we try. No, maybe you can qualify. I mean, honestly, it's just, it's
We've
frustrating.
even talked to like Garfield County, to find out if they're trying to house people who work in Pitkin County.
But I think we need to talk to HUD, right? And I know you've said that.
Yeah, I actually spoke briefly with Jerry Lynn with A.P.C.H.A, who I saw at the Club 20 event a weekend or so ago, and mentioned the real big problem that we're having with these super low income levels, and that asked, can they do something? Can they look at something? Because the starting wage is at least $20 an hour anymore, and no one is earning too little to get into those units. I have tried to talk to an associate that I work with at the market after he showed me a picture of his 1-month-old baby on his phone. I'm like, yes, you might qualify. and his wife does not work while this is going on. And so I tried to work with one of the other people there who speaks Spanish better than I do to talk to him about how do you have to create an account and then how you have to do it. I don't know if it went through or not, or they did it. But what I did really glean from that conversation, which I think is for all of us to keep into account, is people working super low income jobs work 2 jobs, and that's why they don't qualify. They don't stop at the 30 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. They're trying to make a living. They're trying to support a family. They're trying to save some money. They work 60 hours a week. And that's why we're not able to get anyone in to work here, is that to fill those units, is people don't stop and say, oh, okay, well, I'm only making $36,000 a year. I better get a second job. I better work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. And that's why we don't have workers who.
Right, to make a living, you earn way more than the qualifications. You're right.
Exactly. Unless you're a single parent.
Which is,
Even
that's
so,
the
you-
story in Aspen. People work 2-3 jobs.
I know, it always is, but it's just like, I don't know if there's a way that we
What
can.
did Chafa say?
She said she would look into it. I mean, that's all, and I said, I'm sure that other communities are really having these issues, but I believe that the tax increment financing was essentially a contract, and you cannot go back and change the terms of a contract later.
I asked.
And we've gone back to Chafa, and we've asked the same question
Different
a
ways.
lot of different ways, and it hasn't worked.
We financed a project in Denver as a bank that has been slow to lease up. It was a tax credit project, and you would think those projects would lease up.
Right away.
And my hypothesis was the same thing, that they're struggling to find people that qualify,
Yeah, and
because the numbers are set.
I mean,
so
and
low.
it's opposite of the goal to say, well, if you just quit one of those 2 jobs, you would qualify. Why do we want to do that?
Yeah,
We don't.
Chafa would have a fit if we did that.
And unrelated.
Start earning less, please.
A married couple, no kids, only one of them has found work so far, doesn't qualify for that
Correct.
2-bedroom.
It's a 2-bedroom,
And
they
that's
both have to
is that an
work.
APCHA regulation issue?
It's actually in the regulations that if it's a 2-bedroom unit, both adults have to be working full-time in Pitkin County.
Unless they have a
If you
kid.
have a child, only one has to, you can have a stay-at-home parent.
I mean, maybe it's something I look to the board as we could, like, that's the one thing we have power over, I guess, is a regulation change on that issue.
I'll tell you one thing, if you change the regulation where you allow a 2-person household where only one works full-time in Pitkin County into it, you set a precedent and we won't be able to change it back. Just to let you know.
Right, but that's a precedent that couples in town are finding housing, right? Like,
Well, it would extend to all units.
Yeah. Mhm.
So all your units could now have only one working person and have a couple
In a
that
2-bedroom.
don't have children to take care of. So you could have a trust funder living there and
With their
and
working
one person
spouse.
working and one person working.
Wish I was a trust fund.
Yeah, everything has a downside.
It does, and believe me, we looked at all this stuff, trying to figure out what we could do.
built again if we did that.
Yeah, if you said only one person in a 2-bedroom actually has to work.
Yeah.
Think about how that would be played as to, once you're in APCHA, you're all in for life.
well, you still have to qualify for, like, that one person still has to, they have to make low enough combined and all that. Yeah,
Right, and the other person has savings and doesn't work and helps pay the rent.
that's what I wrote down for now. Thanks, Carson.
John?
I think I've commented enough.
All right, I think the only thing I will say is on Kelly's point about sort of the idea out there that we're not enforcing compliance cases and whatnot. I've actually talked to Matthew about just trying to put out more data of how many compliance cases that we are investigating and just sort of to try and combat that narrative, I think. So I think more transparency around that, I think, can help.
That reminds me of 2 other things I wrote down. I'm sorry, Carson.
Make it quick, we're,
Great. What time is that meeting on Tuesday where you're talking to the county, and should we show up?
Can
It's
wait for
probably
my
going to be in your
report. You can
comments.
wait for my update.
Will you
That's right.
also, in your update, say if there will be a Zoom option for the comms meet and greet, because going out of town and then
Yeah.
coming back in town first thing during high
I hadn't
traffic
thought about that, but
is,
we can do that. John?
She's been.
There might be a Wii cycle station at APCHA now, I can't remember.
don't know if I'm gonna be 20 minutes early or 20 minutes late.
That's the, that's.
I'll just
that's-
pick you up, because I have to come back anyway. I'm coming in and out.
You are?
Yeah, anyway,
All
we could talk
right,
about it.
so executive director's comments, Matthew.
Good evening, everyone. Most important thing is to mention that Maddie got married this weekend. And she's off to Cabo tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Right.
Stayed around for the meeting?
Yeah, she did. She tried, we made her delay a honeymoon by 2 days. We're very mean.
Great.
But we're gonna have the meeting with Slate on Monday morning. I wasn't planning on doing a Zoom option. Do you want me to, or?
you know how badly I want to meet with them. It seems prohibitive, but let's discuss
Okay,
afterwards.
okay. And then the only other thing I really wanted to comment on is I am working on a kind of Mythbusters series to put on Facebook in result of some of the recent stuff we had. I thought about doing like an op-ed, but then I thought that was too back and forthy, and so I'm trying to get it at a different angle. My first draft, while amusing, was probably a little too spiky, so I'm just trying to dial that down just a little bit, and so stay tuned for that. And I'm letting you know, but I'm probably not gonna preview the posts because I want to take ownership of it. I don't want to have 8 different editors, but I've chatted to Diane. I think we'll be in a good spot for that.
Did you have a Facebook Live today?
We did have a Facebook Live today. I thought it was good. There weren't many people watching, but it was good information, and Andrew and I walked through the how to do capital improvements on home track, which, probably a niche audience for that, but it's up there and people can watch it whenever they want. A lot of people do go back to that.
Is there an option for people who don't have Facebook, maybe?
Yeah, maybe we should look at that, doing it as well. I mean, we just kind of picked Facebook, but
Okay.
we could probably do something similar on
Yes,
Zoom
'cause
or something.
I don't have one.
What?
Yeah.
Good job.
I don't either, Carson.
Good job.
Yeah. I was just going to add or
So
suggest
good.
that once you feel comfortable with how you've written it and everything, that we turn it into a newspaper.
That
ad.
was, yeah.
You know,
right.
I good, because
Yeah.
that's the only way to get it out
Right.
there in a
Right.
lasting format.
Right, and then I've got a top 10, and
Perfect.
then I'm just gonna fiddle with it a little bit more, and then we'll chat to our colleagues in the press, and then we'll recycle it in Facebook as well.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Cindy, anything on available rental sale units?
For sale units, we will be having 3 come up for next week. They're different types. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't seen the ad yet. But please make sure you sign up for notifications, because if you sign up for notifications, you'll get that email as to what they are if you're interested in purchasing. And again, we do still have Truscott, that people can still sign up for T2 units, 2 bedrooms. Just really, you have to look at what your income is. And for T2, we look at what people are going to be making within the next 6 months or 12 months. So in most of our properties, we look at what they did in like the year before, like in 2021. For tax credit, ACI and T2, we look at what people are going to be making in the next 12 months. So, but then that's $56,400. So any questions, please don't hesitate to call the office.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Okay,
I have all the
Right back on
for
time, look at that.
For the gift. to somebody.
next is election of officers, so we'll be electing chair, vice chair, and treasurer.
I'll nominate Carson Schmitz for president.
Second.
That was quick.
Discussion?
For president? I mean, I'm not crazy. I mean,
Board chair. I think he meant board chair. That's acceptable. That's acceptable to the seconder.
Thing.
okay, so we have a nomination, a second. Any other nominations? All right, so it is a roll call vote.
Okay, John,
Aye.
Carson,
Yes,
Allison.
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
thank you.
I would
Thank
nominate
you.
Skippy for vice chair, if that's acceptable. If there's a second.
Vice President?
I'll second that. Vice President.
Who seconded it?
Any other, I did. Any
you.
other,
Nominations?
Nominations.
Anyone else?
Skippy won it.
I think so.
Yeah,
I
he's,
mean,
he's it right now,
he's not
so.
here, so he doesn't really get.
No, yeah, that's why he's
We-
getting nominated,
what
no.
we-
He's at the Mountain Communities meeting over in
Yeah.
Breckenridge right now.
Okay, great. No other nominations? It's a roll call vote.
Okay, Kelly,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
John.
Aye.
Yes.
Oh, Allison, gosh, I'm so sorry. If I'm not looking,
He would have passed whether I said no or not.
but I skipped you and I shouldn't have done that.
And then last is treasurer.
Well, the treasurer used to, when we had a Merle Finance Committee, which we don't anymore, because under the new lease that they have with the MAA, they don't meet anymore. That person would basically sit on that meeting as well. So that's basically what that treasurer did. The bylaws call for it, so that's why we have a treasurer. I know John was the treasurer for this last year.
I did a really good job, too.
You did an excellent job.
I would nominate John.
I would nominate Francie in her absence
gonna say
as a numbers person.
She's still on APCHA, right?
Yeah.
She's our alternate.
So we have nominations for John, for Allison, and for Francie.
I'll second Francie.
I second John.
All right.
Wait, you can't second and nominate me.
I didn't nominate you, Rachel nominated you.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, so then I've got two nominations. We've got a nomination for John and a nomination for Francie.
Who seconded it for Francie? John.
John did.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we will take a vote for Francie first.
Okay.
Roll call vote.
Do you think
roll
she
call
really
vote.
wants
John,
it?
you don't want it?
I don't think it's anything that she
I don't
needs to
think it
do.
really matters.
I want you to be on the board.
Kelly,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Allison,
No.
Carson,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Okay, that did
And I'll
it.
take the heat if she gets angry.
That's all I need.
If she resigns the position, we'll have to redo this.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, minutes of September 7th, regular meeting. Additions, changes, or a motion to approve?
I'll move. Do you need a motion to approve those?
Mhm.
I'll motion to approve those minutes of September 7th.
I'll second.
And I'm going to abstain because I wasn't here.
Okay.
Okay. Kelly,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
and John.
Yeah.
Motion passes. Next is a regional housing update from Diane.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. May I share my screen?
She looks
Of course.
dressed up today.
Mm.
Wow. She must not be in the
Thanks.
office.
Which one am I sharing? Uh-oh, that probably didn't work.
It's a pretty flower.
Are you seeing West? Nope.
We
let
see
me
your
get
desktop.
back. Sorry, messed up.
Seeing your enemies.
Rookie, I haven't been on Zoom long. Stop share. Okay. Let's try this one more time. And, all right. So you are seeing West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition on your screen.
Got it.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. A few years back, back in, I think, 2019 and a little bit before, a few folks in the Valley started to talk about forming some type of regional housing group. There are lots of different discussions about how it would be formed, and this time back in 2019, folks got back together after COVID and talked about what it would look like. Initially, it was going to be a multi-jurisdictional government entity, and we ended up landing on a nonprofit for a number of reasons, one of which is that nonprofits can apply for funding that local governments can't. The initial group, as you can see on the screen, is largely, these are local governments, although CMC is part of that as well. And Dave Myler, who was one of the founders, was also voted onto the board. And I do have to first thank Ashley Pearl for these slides. She put these together. She's with Pitkin County, and she's working on a lot of a number of issues, including the childcare one you talked about a little bit earlier. So these are the initial board members, and we will be adding board members in the future. Get over to here. Actually, we have a new name. The new name is West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition. Evan Zislis from Aspen Institute has been working on a website, and that will be launched pretty soon. It's actually out already, but we're still working on some of the content. We are looking initially at development neutral strategies. And one of the things, actually, just to go back for just a minute, the strength of this organization right now is that the vast majority of those on the board have a deep experience in affordable housing. And I learn a lot from this group every time we get together. Right now, the main focus is standing up the organization. We're probably about 4 months old at this point, formally. And so this is, initially, we're looking at all of these areas, so including sustainment, which, as you know, has been one of the focus areas for the APCHA board in recent years, about how do we maintain housing stock, and it also means how do we keep people in their homes. In each one of these areas, we've identified kind of what are the development neutral approaches we will take in each of these areas. And what's really important for a fledgling organization is to focus. So we're going to be even initially focusing on a shorter list of these, but these are the types of things that we will be working on as an organization initially. APCHA participated in the 2019 Regional Housing Study, and with a grant from DOLA, we were able to update that study, and that's in process, probably finishing up pretty soon, as well as developing a toolkit for our organization. So far, we've actually received a grant already. We're starting work on our strategic plan, and one of the things that's very important that we're doing is we're building out these tools in such a way that communities can come to us and say, can we use your tools? And we can hand them to them. So it's interesting, DOLA is actually starting to work on a similar type project, and I think we're a little bit ahead of them. Dave Myler is very focused on local fundraising as well. And we are starting the community engagement process, and initially, one of the things we talked about as a group is you want to include everyone, but adding a number of people on the board right now would not really serve the purpose, because we believe we know what we need to do, and obviously we need community input and community engagement, and that will most definitely be forthcoming. Our meetings are all public. The first meeting in the month right now is held at the CMC facility on, Cooper Street I just forgot the name of it. It starts with an M. It's the center at the Glenwood Library. We're meeting there the first Thursday of every month, and the third is virtual, and very much working on standing up the coalition. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Allison?
Thank you so much, Diane, for presenting this. It's so exciting. I have 2 questions. That regional housing update, once that that data's in, is that something that might come in front of the APCHA board?
Sorry, say that one more time?
You said there's a post-COVID update to the 2019 regional housing study. Is that what you said?
There is, and yeah, well, that's a great point. We will make sure we run that by the APCHA board. It is very much a technical update to the report. And yes, it would be, I think it'll be of interest to the board.
I can't wait to see it, and I know we refer to the 2019 one a lot, so I think that's important to see those updates. I think the other thing, I know I've expressed this before, is that first slide, the entities listed. To me, it feels empty without the Aspen Pitkin County Housing Authority. I don't know if the Eagle County Housing Authority is its own actual taxing authority, and that's a big difference, obviously, from our setup here. And I know you've also just addressed this by saying that you don't need more board members right now, but I think just for the record, as far as experts on housing throughout the valley, I do think that APCHA has a pretty long-standing understanding and history, and so as the considerations come in the future for maybe expanding that board, I think that housing authority, the APCHA Housing Authority, is a missing piece there right now.
It's a great point. Actually, APCHA does have representation. I am representing both APCHA and the city of Aspen. So APCHA is one of the, APCHA is technically a department of the city according to the IGA. And I worked with APCHA and had the fortune of being able to spend a lot of time with the APCHA folks over 14 months, my first 14 months here. So initially we decided that we would approach it that way. Ashley Pearl and Dave Myler recently met with Matthew, and we very much, I envision APCHA being very involved in this coalition. So at this point, though, we made the decision that because it's a $10,000 membership fee, and we know APCHA could afford that, it was sort of redundant at this point. The other piece was that Matthew was pretty new, getting his, the focus was really very much on the APCHA operations. So there may be a time. It's also really important at this stage that we're not too Upper Valley heavy. So having two folks from the city of Aspen on the board could be a little bit heavy. And to that point, we frequently have the managers of Rifle, Parachute, and Newcastle participate in this. And they are very interested in it. They frequently attend meetings. Their boards and councils aren't ready to sign on yet.
I really appreciate that clarification, Diane.
So I guess my question,
Kelly
Diane,
had a,
sorry.
Kelly.
Sorry.
Don't interrupt me. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm good at that, sorry.
Hi, Diane. Thank you. I will just echo Allison's concerns. You've heard me say this before, but I'll say it again. I wonder if there's a way to have like a advisory committee that can show that the mayors of those, Colorado River District towns are participating. I feel like it's really absent to not have some of our nonprofit developers, housing developers, on this coalition. Habitat, is just such a big player. Manaus has a CDC that they can leverage to do housing. The Mountain Voices Project is all in this sphere. So I'm eager for this to expand in a more community oriented rather than government heavy way. I'll just say that. And then I would also love and maybe recommend in the technical update some shoring up of the methodology used in the 2019, because it has been criticized and people will use it as a way to totally undermine the results of this report. And I think we should get ahead of that in the technical update by really explaining what the methodology is and how it's best practice and all of that. So just a couple of comments. Thanks.
And thanks, Kelly. And it's interesting. I think since 2019, the critical need for affordable housing valley-wide has changed. And so what you stated is very important, and that's why it's part of the reason why it's really focused on a technical and data update. Although we're not resting our laurels on that one because we don't need to anymore. When Garfield County and Glenwood can't hire employees because their employees can't afford to live anywhere between Parachute and Glenwood, we know it's a problem.
John?
Well, maybe I missed it, but some of it you talked about funding sources, grants, right? Why not create a governmental entity that has some taxing power to create real dollars to then invest in real housing?
It's a good point, John. One of the points of discussion was not competing with the jurisdictions who are the members. And so we've basically structured ourselves to be able to kind of be in parallel with those local organizations. And there are times when we actually are, bidding for the same grant as some of the local organizations. But it really was intentional to not set ourselves up as a quasi-governmental organization.
I mean,
Can I comment as well on that?
Yeah, but real quick, is it the point of the authority is purely advisory, or is it we want to figure out solutions, build housing, or we want to advise these jurisdictions on their housing solutions?
We very much plan on being an active entity and an entity that uses funds to do things. So whether it's a buy-down program or it's interesting, one of our members is Eagle County, and some of their programs that they've done where people can go out and find a home and then come to the agency and ask for money to do a deed restriction on the property. And they basically get a chunk of money to help buy down the price of the unit. So we will be implementing those types of programs and using funds that we gather from not just grants, but also from fundraising, and we believe we'll be partnering with the public and private sector at the same time. So right, all of our members have very active affordable housing programs. So we were looking at how do we be additive in that space, and also how do we, much like RAFTA, and some of you were involved in the early days of RAFTA. It's hard to get the entire valley to agree on something. So the fact that we got to the point that we're at, and frankly, I think we're moving quite quickly to have already secured grants and started to put in place programmatic elements. So we intend to keep that pace going. Thank you.
Well, and I'd like to comment on that because some of the context for this coalition was in response to the resiliency roadmap that was done during the pandemic and this allocation of over $400 million at the state level of ARPA funds that has to be deployed very quickly. It has to be allocated by 2024 to projects. And so I think this coalition, in its life, whatever it's the life it takes on, this is going to be like an early term part of its life, is the ability to work quickly to leverage that money. And so half of that money was dedicated towards grants, and the other half of that money was dedicated towards loans. And governments can't take advantage of loans without TABOR consequences. So.
Yeah, just a quick comment as well, John. I think that might be a destination that this sort of thing could eventually get to. But there's a lot of real differences between the mitigations. I saw that on the list of how do you reach concurrency, but if one community is developing 95% free market homes and 5% housing, we're never going to get back in balance and so we're up here at this level of mitigation and things like that, and how much housing you have to build if a new subdivision, whereas other communities aren't there yet. And there's always, I think Diane was much more diplomatic than I ever am, but isn't this all Aspen's problem? Are you asking taxpayers in Garfield County or Glenwood or Carbondale to pay for housing where's it going to go? Do you build it where it's less expensive? Do you build it up here? Is it built based on where the money was raised from the sales tax or property tax? And who does it house? So it gets really, really complicated, that way. And this organization is going to have to work a lot of those things out before they can consider going as a regional entity to ask for taxes that may, again, compete with Snowmass Village's housing tax or Aspen's housing tax or things like that. So that's a long way off.
Well, I mean, I worry that you do have pretty, I can't think of the word I'm thinking of, but a pretty small-sided view of my town, right? Everybody, this is my town, and what. you gotta
Parochial.
keep yeah, I was gonna say parochial, something, but it has to be a valley-wide, and I like the idea that it's a valley-wide coalition. Whether the person living in the affordable housing, wherever they live, and if they work in Aspen, which Aspen is the engine that drives the bus for the entire valley, taxes are still generated from that person buying and shopping in the town that they live in. I mean, it's gotten harder and harder, right?
Yeah, I just went through 4 years of that sort of discussion back and forth about when we did the RTA, the Transportation Authority, and Glenwood Springs would say that they are a very big tourism economy in their own right, and they need their own employees. They are the adventure capital of
disagree.
America.
I don't
So,
disagree.
yeah.
I mean, everybody wants to hold on to what they got, but eventually you still have a problem where you're not,
I don't
meeting
disagree
and-
with you at all.
so.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know if I'm accomplishing anything with my comments, but
No,
I wanted to understand.
it's a good destination to get to.
And John, to your point, I think it will be really interesting to watch. There's a group that's working on creating a valley-wide taxing district for childcare. And I think that will be an interesting one to watch, and it'll be depending on how it goes, there's nothing saying we couldn't morph in a few years into something different. But this is just the start.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move to the first reading of Resolution Number 5, Series 2022, adopting minor amendments to the APCHA regulations and scheduling a public hearing for October 5th, 2022.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Bethany.
Hi. Thanks, Maddie, for sharing the screen. It's page 5, I believe. So what we have is minor changes to the APCHA regulations, which is why we're at first reading. So the memo's been done. We're in red. Italics is what we're proposing adding, and I will walk through one by one, and then I'm happy to answer questions. The first is an additional paragraph under our fraud warning, which discusses sham marriages. And I'm not going to read it, but APCHA feels that it's in our best interest to add this verbiage to our regulations to make sure folks are obtaining units correctly. Carson, do you want me to answer questions after each of these?
John? Oh, sorry, I didn't see.
Well, this was the only one I had questions on, and it just feels really hard how do you determine if it's a sham marriage? We're married, right? Here's the marriage license.
Nope, fair point. Tom Smith, our attorney, helped us draft this provision.
I mean, David and I just got married. Or Matthew and I just got married.
I'm already married.
That's a big
19 years yesterday.
Polygamist. I'm just wondering, that's really hard to say, well, you're a sham marriage, you came in and applied for this, and you just got married yesterday because this unit became available yesterday. I mean, how do you determine?
There are,
Yeah.
I've got a lot of experience with evaluating sham marriages in the immigration sphere, and there are pretty accepted standards and evidentiary standards, which, it's not as arbitrary as you might sound, and just getting married for the sake of obtaining a benefit, whether it's APCHA, whether it's an immigration benefit, is legally, seen as not valid.
Does it create, use the example I just said where I got married 2 days ago, this unit comes available today.
Yeah.
And I want to bid on it or I want to apply for it. Does it create legal issues when you go, no, you're a sham marriage?
This,
then
John,
open
just
you
to
up to something else.
clarify, this is when one person owns a unit
Right.
and then gets married and all of a sudden wants to take their name off or add the other spouse,
Okay.
the brand new spouse, and maybe leave the unit. So this is that, not necessarily a unit becomes available and they start bidding.
Okay, okay.
And we don't intend to be doing, having husband in one booth, wife in another booth, asking all the relationship questions. We're not going to be doing that, but it is a tool to be used.
This is more to stop the exchange of
Right.
units without going through a lottery process.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's in the part of our regulations that would also qualify for, would also account for people putting in bids, right?
So the fraud section talks about general for anyone
Right.
that's submitting an application or a packet to us.
So I appreciate that clarification. I had a lot of issues with this one as well. But us just saying that that's what it's for has to be either, showing up in the regulations as that's what it's for, or it's going to apply to everyone. And then I do think I have a lot of questions along John's lines. Well, and Matthew, one thing I was thinking, like you already said, it isn't legal. The thing you're saying that, maybe people are trying to do, if it already isn't legal, do we need to put it in the APCHA regulations? And I think more broadly, I would love some context on how big of an issue this is, how, I guess, it's really hard for me to have something on first reading that I didn't know was an issue. So I think that's just a broader comment of this entire segment of our agenda. That to then, I guess I just have a lot of follow-up questions, and I think prior to first reading would have been a more appropriate time to have them.
Maybe I can jump in. So, I will tell you, having sat on previous iterations of the board where we did review compliance cases, I think there were 2 sham marriages, well, total, but that was for less than a year that board. But there were 2 of the compliance cases that came up, and I would say it was extremely obvious that the reason that they got married was solely for the purpose of transferring housing from one person to another. You never know if money was exchanged. It goes outside the lottery process, right? I think this is in the fraud section, and I think to Matthew's point, we're not separating people and asking them personal questions, right? That's not the intent at all. I think this is just for very obvious violations, right? It's in the fraud section, right? You're committing fraud by doing this, and I think on the advice of Tom, this is just memorializing that in the regulations that it's not acceptable.
It might be more, maybe the placement is an issue then, so later we're gonna discuss the definition of a family, and I wonder if sham marriage would help there, that define that it's not a definition of a family there. I think that it feels punitive. It feels, I don't have enough context again to be voting on regulation changes while I'm hearing about an issue.
How would it be punitive if someone
So
got married
I guess if
for
it's
the
happening a lot,
purposes
that
of-
we decided we should put something in the regulations to keep it from, this is happening too much, we should keep it from happening. But if it's in this section, what it feels like to me is we might have a situation where 2 working locals get married to have a 2-bedroom house, which to me feels like they probably pretty much mean it that they're married.
Right, I don't,
Well, it
again,
could be to get that 2-bedroom,
right.
a sham marriage happens, right?
And
That's
then,
kinda where I was
what did we
thinking.
lose out as a community when we have 2 working locals and a
Because then
2-bedroom?
that one person moves out.
Well, yeah, somebody,
when-
then you get a quick divorce, and the one person now has a 2-bedroom unit, and there's no ability to force a second person into that unit. And it was, it can happen. People.
Well, so it can happen in a non-sham marriage, which was just a poorly decided marriage, I think
Yeah, but it
that for
doesn't
us
happen
to-
within 3 months.
I think-
It doesn't happen
Well,
as.
you have to win, you'd have to get married, you'd have to win, you'd have to get you'd have to have a bank loan, you'd have to move in, and
I think I'm okay with the fact that it's in the fraud section.
Correct.
And it's a big old boilerplate,
I am as
scary
well.
words, read it, and enter at your own risk kind of thing.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm okay with it as well. To me, this is just similar to all the other things that are listed in the fine schedule that says you can't do this, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. And just because they're there doesn't mean that whoever's reading the guideline, we're assuming they might be doing this. We're just saying, this is what's not allowed.
Yeah, we're working so hard on so many important changes to the regulations. I think when something pops up, I guess what I'm asking is for a little more context, now or later, if that's more appropriate, as to why with our staff time, with our board time, this is the thing that we are
This is on the
throwing in.
advice of Tom, of our attorney.
Okay.
Yeah.
And our
We also
enforcement
spent
officer, Bethany.
days-
That's what I wanna
days
know,
with
you know.
regards to an incident like this.
Yeah.
And the
yeah.
the transfer is really good, helpful context for me, not that people are trying to live and work here, and this is one way to get access. I mean, I think when we see extreme examples, to me, I don't think of them as evil actors. That breaks my heart that people want to stay so badly that they're thinking of every possible way to get into our community. So the sneakiness of a transfer, like, so what my friend, I'm gonna move out, my friend wouldn't have to go through the lottery process if I marry them, and then transfer the house and then divorce them and move out of town. That's what we're seeing happen.
That's what has happened, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you could take that argument to immigration and say, is there anything wrong with illegal immigration? Because these people are just trying to get to someplace
Right.
better, and that's where they really want to
Right.
be. And yeah, they didn't go through the process, and they didn't get their green card, but they're nice people, and they're just trying to have a better
No, they
life.
really marry. I mean, they really did it. It's not.
Well, but, I
Right,
mean, you
like-
could apply this, to almost any regulation, right? Hiding money in a trust, hiding property in an LLC, right? They want it real bad, and they really formed a company, right? So to me, it's about the,
It's putting people on notice.
right, they're obtaining properties by circumnavigating the existing regulations, and I don't think that's fair or right for the people that are following the rules.
When there's a property transfer in name, like if it's, I guess they still have to qualify, right? So if it's one bedroom unit transferring from one person's name to their spouse's name instead, I guess, that person still has to be fully qualified, work the hours, make the wage. They just found a way around the lottery. Is that correct in that situation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then a 2-bedroom, if they get married and they're in a 2-bedroom and they transfer a name, I mean, you're not allowed to be a single person in a 2-bedroom, right? Would that even be allowed? Like,
Yes, you are. I mean, if someone won a unit as with 2 people and then their household size changed and so there are only 1 person left, if they got married, they could add their new spouse to that unit as well.
but they can't transfer to just the spouse's name, right?
Correct. Minimum occupancy would have to be met.
Yeah, I guess I'm not seeing the problem.
Because what we're seeing is that the spouse transfers it to that new person's name, even if it's a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, and then they don't live there anymore. But we
And they
don't
get paid additional
necessarily-
money
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
to do it.
They're not a real marriage, so there's financial arrangements being made as to why you'll let me use your last name to get in this unit, and
I'll
we'll
give you
never tell anybody.
$50,000
Yeah.
if we get married.
So both their names are then on the deeds and they get to keep the 2-bedroom, but one moves away and we don't find out. But if we found out, because we have this in our regulations, we'd have some teeth.
Correct.
Well, you still have to prove it was a sham.
Right.
We would.
Right.
Which is hard.
But I just think this, like, my thought was just a boilerplate warning label that says,
Not allowed.
Yeah.
And this is on
and this
Tom's
doesn't really
advice, yeah.
change our regulations.
Right, it's
Right.
not,
It's-
This is
right.
just, it's
don't
like,
cheat.
don't
Don't
drink
cheat.
this because there's sodium in it or something.
It's not.
I have a different question, but it relates to your question, Allison. Are you saying that you would rather see something like this come forward as a work session first and be able to have anonymous examples of what happened or why staff is recommending these changes, and then at a subsequent meeting have first reading?
I really appreciate that. Yes, I think that's my biggest issue is that finding out about, I think this comes up a lot. The one thing the board can do is help with regulation changes, right? And so if something has come up on the staff level that, because I value our staff time and I know it's limited, rises to the level of we need to start rewriting the regulations and go get board approval, I'd love to have heard about it in a work session, exactly, like the style. In a
It does
discussion
feel a
ahead
little
of
bit
time.
like whack-a-mole, like
Like,
something comes up and we want to
We
fix it.
found it, yeah, we found out it needed, we're gonna spend the staff time to do this, rewrite it, I'm sure the board will approve it, and then let's move on, and it'll get, so I think that discussion is so much more helpful for me to feel comfortable with a vote, because we don't, in the end, make that many regulation changes as we look through them.
I can really relate because as the city council operates now, consent calendar is not necessarily items we've seen but they have been approved through the manager, they've been approved through the process, and now they're asking us for final approval, and we may ask some questions, we may not. But it's also been, hey, if we have to have a work session for everything on the consent calendar first, we're never going to get to the rest of the business. So, but I do relate, and I think that there, maybe even if it's first reading, because there is a chance to vote no on second reading or whatever, and that's when public comment, to just have perhaps a little more fulsome explanation of why staff is bringing it forward.
Absolutely, and so even like ahead of the changes, maybe a little memo paragraph that explained even that one issue, Bethany, of this is where we're seeing this is in the transfers. That would have helped my understand. I'm reading this 2 days ahead of time, thinking this. I've never even heard that this was an issue. What are all the questions that we have thought about, haven't? And I do appreciate that if we discuss. Well, I think that regulation changes are the one thing, because it's the one thing the board has you're asking input for, or you need a vote for. Having the discussion ahead of time is helpful.
Yeah, and the other thing that might be a way we can approach this as well is if in the memo it says these are 3 other regulation areas that staff is taking a look at and hopes to bring forward in a future meeting. So, if there's things that are starting to be in the tickler file or starting to be a burr under the saddle, you can let us know that we are beginning to look at this issue. We're seeing some problems. We'll, bring it forward in the future.
I think that's fantastic, even in Cindy and Matthew's updates, and here's a couple other things that we're noticing that we're gonna get to writing, just so that, I think these are all gonna pass through. I don't feel prepared enough to pass them through, but I would hate for the work to have been done, but you didn't go to the board first, found out that we had tons of questions or tons of points, and then had to go back and redo it anyway. And so I think, again, I think our staff is so smart, so limited. I want the time to be spent in a way that is more efficient than let's try this out. Oh, it was voted down, let's try it out again, let's try it out again.
Well, and I think that's what staff does when, personally, when I look at this change, to me, this is one of the least controversial things that to me, it's like, this is very straightforward. Personally, I would not have expected to have a pre-discussion on something like this, right? But I think we can have it now, and right, this is first reading,
right? Exactly.
And so right, we've got plenty of time between now and second reading. If there's additional conversations, we can certainly have those. So, in the interest of time, maybe Bethany, do you want to go ahead, or
Sure.
do we want to just?
I'll go quick. And Allison, the only thing I'll say is that we've been sitting on a lot of these for a couple months. It hasn't been a knee-jerk reaction. We try to accumulate a couple small ones and then push them out while we are working on some bigger ones, just noodling them internally. So the section 2, the top of page 6, Maddie, thank you. APCHA will review a qualification application once a year and will only accept a new application during that year if there's a household change. This means that, I should say, what we've been seeing is all of a sudden, a month after they've been qualified to bid, they're saying, hey, wait, I have some more money. I should be in a different category. Or, hey, wait, I've lost money. I should be in a lower category. And so we're seeing people asking for new qualifications every month. And while it's a big process to submit a packet, it's also not an accurate representation. People should show us exactly what they have once and we'll look at it. However, if they've had a baby or some other change to their household size, we're happy to look at it then, but we're not going to look at it every month just because they might have found or lost money.
I think that's reasonable.
Any questions?
Ready to.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, other than a job change. If someone has gone from a $55,000 a year job and they've now gotten a $90,000 a year job, I wouldn't want them bidding at their old category level.
But
I
right
mean-
now, you always go by the previous year's taxes.
We always go
so
by
that's
the
not what
previous year
people are
taxes, so
doing.
it's not gonna matter
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay, well, the next session talks about also a most recent pay stub, which would then show a different income than your previous application. That's all I'm kind of wondering is, if someone really had a
Yeah, but I
significant
think
boost.
that's a different,
It's a different,
that's a different
It's
It's
issue.
Yeah.
a different
Yeah.
section in the
Sorry.
regulations. So the section we were in was qualification rules, whereas the next one is actually transferring outside of the bid process.
Yeah,
So a
so-
little
I
bit
mean,
of talking about.
The only thing I'm kind of thinking about is related to like health insurance,
Yeah.
where you lose one job and you're allowed to go back into re-enrollment because you've had a life-changing circumstance. And,
Yeah.
if your employer just closed the business and you were making 90,000 and now you're lucky to get a job that's 45, that's a life-changing circumstance. And it seems like if there's something of a certain magnitude, they should be allowed to, income increase or decrease of over 30% or something. But, you'd hate to tell somebody, I'm sorry you just lost your really good paying job, and I'm sorry you had to take a less paying job by 40%, but no, you can't qualify for any of the, getting on the wait list for housing, for rentals or anything until another 10 months from now.
Real quick,
we
don't-
had somebody do that. And they quit a job, and they got qualified for a lower category. And within 6 months, they were back working that same job. So they were right up there, but they got a lower income
Yeah.
unit.
Do
No,
we-
I'm
This
just wondering.
stops that from happening, because you have to go through that, if we look at them once a year, and that's what we want to do, is we want to qualify people once a year. Because we've changed it where you can only bid up one category, honestly, it's just been, you've got to be kidding me. Oh, now look at this, because now I went, oh, no, wait a minute. And then 2 months later, oh, wait a minute. Now they want to go back
Yeah.
down again.
Right.
This stops that from happening.
So real quick, so when you win a property, don't we get updated financials?
We have not done that.
Okay.
That is one of the things that we have not done once
Okay. All right.
they've won a property. We get their loan documents. Whatever they fill out for the bank to get a loan, we
Right.
get their loan documents, so we can
Right.
see how close they were to what they provided us.
That's a great
So
question.
someone could have won a lower category unit, but is demonstrating higher category income to the
Well, I'm just
bank.
thinking of Rachel's example, somebody
And-
making 50,000 and now they're making 90 and, or so we, right?
I'm surprised by that. I guess I was of the impression that at closing, you made sure that they were still in the category that they're closing
Yeah,
on.
usually the closing is within 10 weeks, and they've provided us with all the documentation that they have. If they've changed jobs, more than likely, the lender's not going to give them
Right.
a loan. So that's one of the, because now the lenders, the day before closing, they require them to show that they're still working for that
sure.
employer.
And don't we get some document from the lender?
We do, we get the loan
That shows us
document.
the income?
Yeah, we
But-
get the loan document is what we get.
It sounds like salary is not what people keep coming back and showing is different. It's not a job thing because, again, we only look at the last year's taxes. It's some sort of extra savings account. It's some sort of inheritance. It's some sort of, oh, actually, I had to give that money back, right? It's these other sneaky things. It's actually not a job change issue that you're seeing, Bethany.
I would say that's what we've seen most recently. Yes, 100%, Alice.
And they're kind of just coming clean with fraud the first or second or fourth time, right? They're kind of, so it would be great, and I think this is a position that we're putting in it, like the qualification specialist, having some teeth, right, to be like, well, did you lie before or now? I appreciate where this is coming from. I could not bid for a full year on anything, though I was very qualified because I took a lower paying job. I had to stay in my higher category for APCHA, but no bank would have ever let me buy anything. Like APCHA made me bid for 3s when I only earned for 2s. No bank would have let that, which meant I just had to let every 3 go by that year because I couldn't have
Right.
afforded it. I quit a job in February. It was bad timing. So that does, your exact example has happened to me. And yeah, so I appreciated that I had rental options at the time, I suppose. So it's your total assets that people are fudging. I feel like once you admit to an asset, that's on your, like, every time you put in a packer from then on, you better say how much is in that bank account now, if you were trying to go higher, you know? It's a lot of
Yes,
work.
very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We good on that one? Move to the next one.
So this section is specifically conveyances outside the bid process. So this is talking about the addition of an owner to the title. So you're adding a spouse or a child or a sibling, but your name is staying on. What we're asking to add is just that the current owner provide us documentation of their federal and state income tax returns, W-2s, 1099s, employment verification, and most recent pay stub. And this is just to ensure that whoever's in that unit is actually fully in compliance with our regulations before we allow them to add someone to get around the APCHA regulations of compliance of working and living in the unit and all the other things they have to do.
Yeah.
Kind of surprised that one's not already in
Yeah,
there.
they wouldn't have to meet the category, obviously, because.
Right.
But yeah.
Can I ask a question on that, Bethany? Just more the mechanics, but is putting a child on more about inheritance and people taking care of estate issues in advance, or you know, I was surprised you could put a child on before you pass or anything like that. I know we've gone through the regulations for inheritance, if you know, coming up to speed, having the occupants in the units and so on and so forth, but you know, can you add your 6-month-old baby as a? No.
These are
Well,
adult
So it's
children
like
that are working
adult
full-time.
children.
It's an adult child, so it's, I don't think you can add anyone under the age of 18, but I could be incorrect about that. But we're really talking about that 24-year-old who maybe is back in town, living fully in the unit, working in Pitkin County, and it is an inheritance piece where they know that that child's going to take over the unit when they pass away, and they're both fully meeting all the APCHA regs, so they're adding that child on now to help pay the mortgage or, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
they're
you know,
looking
as
for.
long as we're potentially updating this, I would update that term to say adult child as
Okay,
opposed
we
to a
can do that.
child. Thank you.
And you're saying, so anyone on the title must live in that house full-time, to our
Correct.
full-time definition?
Yeah.
Unless
Yes.
they have a leave of absence to go to college.
Okay, and then part 7.
Yeah, so this one is also at the advisement of Tom Smith, our attorney, to really tighten up the definition of family. This was mistakenly removed from the 2018 APCHA regulations. The intent has always been that this should be in the regulations, but it's been missing for 4 years. So we are asking that it get added back in. This is, you know, what the definition of a family is in APCHA's mind. Happy to answer any questions.
I guess people try and convey outside this definition to like a best friend, they feel like family.
Yes, or they try to illegally adopt an adult.
Oh, wow.
An adult so that they can transfer it to them. So we're really trying to tighten it up. We're seeing a lot of units that are being conveyed or we're being asked about how to convey it to certain individuals. And when we discovered that this was missing, when we knew the intent was always there, we need it back in.
So I think this is a good place for some sort of like husband and wife, but not the sham kind, you know, like,
Repeating that section.
I
here.
suppose like that's not going to meet our definition because right here it just says husband or wife. So
Yeah, and Tom specifically put the sham marriage under fraud.
Okay.
We were debating where to go with
Yeah.
it, whether it was in definitions or fraud, and he strongly recommended that it go in the fraud section.
Bethany, the only question I have under definition is, was it considered or was there a reason why grandchildren are not considered immediate family or being eligible for transfer?
Cindy might have to answer that. Since I've been with APCHA, it's never been discussed or part of the regs, but she might know.
Yeah, and as far as I know, it's never gone that far. Usually it's it's never been a grandchild that you
Yeah.
can deed it to.
And I'm just thinking about this aging population that I'm becoming part of, and others who've been in units a long time. It might be that your kid's gone, but your grandkid has started
back
living
next.
with you and working here. My niece lived here and worked with me for quite a while, but she's gone now too. It's not a point I want to belabor, but I think it's worth maybe considering in the future. Just, we've gotten so many older
I think that's fair.
people.
I would support that too.
I recommend approving at first reading and schedule a public hearing on October 5th, 2022, the above changes to the Aspen-Pitkin County Housing Authority regulations.
Okay, and then do we want to note Rachel's addition of adult to child?
With the amended as suggested by Rachel.
Yeah, I think that's in the title
Yeah.
of that one, but I will second this.
Got a first and a second, and then it's a roll call vote.
Kelly,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Allison,
No.
Carson,
Yes,
John.
Yes.
motion passes. Okay, we will move to the discussion on results from Rightsizing survey.
I just want to make a comment. I voted to move those forward because I want to move them forward. I still have a little concern about the idea of a life-changing circumstance in the course of a year. I don't know if there's a way, I don't want to belabor it to the next meeting, but if there's any way we could really look at something that's substantial and different from somebody playing the games, but, you know, they were fired from their job, not that they quit, that they, you know, just, are there safeguards that we could put in there for the rare occasion when someone just honestly has had that major life-changing circumstance?
Maybe some sort of an exception
Or a
like
review by staff,
review by
or
sta-
special
yeah.
review, or something.
Right.
But I didn't want to wait till next meeting to bring it up, but I'd love to find some language there.
a special review, and you could just say hardship.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
hardship.
my God.
Yeah, no.
You're out for hardships.
Wait,
Yeah.
but anyhow, let's let everybody think about it
Yeah.
a little
I
bit.
like the idea if you got a raise, right?
Yeah, a significant raise, and you're
Significant
still
raise
able to
moves your
qualify for the
category.
lower unit.
That's
but
more.
again, the
You want a
bank
higher
might-
Category, so you, right, you want a different
Yeah, I'm gonna
place.
approve a loan where somebody's debt service coverage is 4 times. It's pretty easy to do, because they're getting a cheaper unit and they got more money. But, you know, a bank's gonna approve a loan where somebody got a raise and they're buying,
But even if they got the raise just 2 months ago,
sure.
Yeah. I think we should look in that a little more depth. I
Projectability to
wanted to
repay.
move it
Agreed.
forward, but
Thank you, Rachel. All right, so we got the Rightsizing survey results.
Okay, great. Well, first I'd just like to reintroduce myself. My name is Liz Axberg. I'm the new housing policy analyst for the city of Aspen in the city manager's office. And I get to work with APCHA a lot too. And so, yeah, today I'm going to be going over the results from the Rightsizing survey that went out. I believe the board first talked about the survey last spring. So a couple things first to start with is I'm really just going over the results from the survey. That's it. What did people respond? And then we can discuss, sort of go over their results and go from there. It's not really the point of a policy recommendation. And second of all, so I do not mind getting questions or comments while I'm going through it either, but I think it is helpful to kind of wait till the end when you have kind of the full picture, and we can definitely go back to slides as well. But if something's really urgent, that's fine. And also, since I wasn't part of survey development, I'm sure APCHA staff might chime in as well if there's specific questions about that, since I wasn't there when the survey was written. So and also the handouts you received, there was a 2-page just summary, and then there's the full analysis, just so you know, just in case you wanted a more brief version. And so we'll go from there. So first, just giving some background and introduction, both for people listening, about you all. So the purpose of the survey really was to give insight into how owners are currently feeling about rightsizing, which is when people would voluntarily move their house down a size, and so then families looking to expand to move up. And this is an issue. We have over 400 spare bedrooms in the APCHA ownership inventory, and along with that, 16.7% of APCHA owners are retired or semi-retired, which we've already sort of touched on today. So that's why these spare bedrooms start appearing. People are getting older, retiring, kids are moving out, and so spare bedrooms appear, or like other instances too, divorce. And so the survey was sent out in May, completed in July of 2021. And so again, to reiterate kind of the goals from it, how are people feeling about right sizing, but also to sort of inform some of our policy. How can this policy actually work? What incentives do we need for it to work?
Is that a typo? July of 2021?
Or 2022.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I actually have been doing that a few times, getting
No, I think
confused
we
what
did
year
it
it
in
was.
2021.
We just did it this.
No, this was this.
Oh,
That
we
was.
did, 'cause we
It's
said
definitely
that again.
2022.
That's right, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think I
20's over.
I think I did that this week where I was like, what year is it actually? It's
Very good.
2022. This was this year.
Right.
But I will say that the data on the spare bedrooms and retired, that's from 2021.
Okay. Right.
Because that's from the biennial survey affidavit. So
Can you help with a definition? And I'm going to try and keep my questions all to the end. 16.7% of APCHA owners, not 16.7% of the residents. Obviously, the number of people who live in APCHA are not all owners. So it's not 16% of our housed workforce or housed population.
Zero.
yeah, this is just for owners. Yeah.
Do you understand? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just owners, people who responded to the survey. So in the system. Yeah.
And there may be renters within,
Like, I just
Retired.
think it's that high.
Yeah, it's not, and of course, like, those people have been in the system for a very long time, so they bought houses. All right, and so in total, we got 484 responses of that, so that's about a 29.1% response rate, which actually for surveys, that's really great. And along with that, 3 and 4 bedroom owners disproportionately responded to it, which is also good, because that means that the survey actually reached the right audience, because more 3 and 4 bedroom owners are the ideal candidates for a right sizing program. And so then you'll notice in some of the questions that I don't even include like studio 1 bedroom owners who responded to questions, just to help reduce some of the visual clutter on charts, and because we don't really need studios to downsize. So yeah, and also, well, I just go from there. And so I just kind of do it question by question. Here's how it was worded, and here's what the response was. And on the charts, I use percentages just to give you an idea of proportion, but then also I put the actual numbers into the table just because it's beneficial to get an idea, like what is the actual number of people who responded yes. And yeah, so let me just move this. Ooh, we actually went past one, sorry. Okay, so for 3 and 4 bedroom owners, it's almost 20%, so it's about 19% of both responded yes. But also, I think it's important to note how high of a proportion of people responded maybe. For 4 bedroom owners, it was 54% said maybe, and 36% of 3 bedroom owners said maybe. And even though it's 19%, that comes out to about 70 houses total, including 2 bedroom owners too, because actually quite a few 2 bedroom owners responded as well. But so that would be, 70 total, but if you look at the maybes, that would add another 143 households as well. So what reduction in bedrooms would you be willing to consider? This one I think is interesting because of 2 and 3 bedroom owners, the vast majority of them would be willing to consider a 1 bedroom decrease, but 4 bedrooms is a little bit more split, and actually more 4 bedroom homeowners are willing to consider a 2 bedroom, so a 2 bedroom decrease. Yeah,
That chart's a little hard to read,
this one?
because you've got 2 bedroom owners that would be willing to consider a 3 bedroom.
No.
There's one of them.
Some of them just responded that, yeah. They like even like studio people responded and said something like, Yeah, I'd consider a 3-bedroom. Yeah, I think also, like, you'll see it sometimes where I think also people misunderstand questions, and I'll explain on a future one, but yeah, so it's there, but yeah, because they're like, I think they were interpreted as, yeah, I would love to have a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom home, but.
Well, and then that might be right-sizing if you
Yeah.
have a family of 3 living in a studio, you know,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question was worded maximum reduction in bedrooms.
Trying to make it very clear,
It
John.
wasn't,
Not
would
everybody.
you be willing to right size if you're in a studio?
Yeah.
People
Right.
don't read the directions.
Yeah, it's,
Okay, all right, sorry.
no,
Question you want, like other politicians.
and that's always the hard thing about surveys too, where it's like, how, if I was looking to respond, like, survey, how am I gonna interpret this? So, yeah.
I got a question right now.
Okay, would you be willing to consider the move? So most people from all 3 bedroom sizes are saying 3+ years, but still 19% of 4+ bedroom owners did say as soon as possible, which would come out to 7 4-bedroom homeowners and 8 3-bedroom owners said that too. And then it just increases kind of dramatically by the amount of time they have, which I think kind of lends way that, that it's a rollout. This is a long-term policy of how we continue to incentivize this over the years as, as the population at APCHA keeps changing. So this one, a lot of bars here, and so that's, but I'll cut through it. So this one, we're trying to kind of get at what incentives are most important if they were to move homes. And one thing to note is that this is not a ranked question. People just checked whatever was important to them. And location came out on top by far. Location and then cash incentive were at the top 2. But otherwise, I mean, it's most things were fairly equal or very marginally different, I would say. Like, it's not, but I think, as you can see, 4-bedroom owners have the most things checked for each one, so they're definitely the most, they care about the most things. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
They're the ones downgrading.
Or also, you even see, like, the only time that 2-bedroom owners had something on a higher priority was extra storage, because they're in a smaller unit too. So, and also, and then I think, like, Pets Allowed, fully upgraded, those things came, like, similarly ranked as well. But location and cash was definitely highest.
Like, what's fully upgraded though? Right, as a survey taker,
Yeah.
that was.
Newly renovated,
Right.
new.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what the survey said, so, I guess, put it in their shoes if you were taking it, how would you interpret it, I guess, but,
Yeah, new or fully refurbished. I was going to say, as a comment, when you're doing a survey, you might put some things down. When you see the size of the unit that a new 2-bedroom will be and the size of the little bathroom in there, or whatever, you start to walk back and say, I'm not so sure of giving up what I got.
definitely.
And not upgraded is one of those key turnoffs.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's one thing to check a box, yeah. All right, would you require assistance with the sale? So, most people from each category did say no, but still about a third in each category said maybe. So that, I think a lot of people use maybe as, like, sort of this default option. It's kind of like, I think a lot of people are just like, well, it depends, or they're not really sure what that means, or what would all qualify. And also, I think it's interesting to note that 4+ bedroom households are the least likely to say yes to needing assistance. Yeah.
What does NA mean on that one?
Yeah, so that one, I did leave the NAs. Usually I left NA off, but that just means that no, they didn't answer it. Yeah. I left it off on some charts when it was a super high amount of NAs, just because.
Those are the people who aren't considering it at all. Right?
Yeah, they just weren't thinking, yeah. And so usually that happened, like a question is like, if yes, then this. And I took NAs off, but I mean, yeah, it's not
Well,
super
could NA
necessary.
mean they're moving out of the program altogether?
It could mean a few things. I mean, I would say in this case, I think that they just skip the question, or we're like, I'm not interested in selling, or I think it could be several things.
You noted in your comments that should there be a future survey or something to try to narrow it down, we delve more into demographics. And I think you may find that as folks are older, they may want more assistance with the move, as opposed to the younger people with a 4-bedroom probably had a lot of children who can help them move, and things like that.
Yeah.
But that would help kind of add a little nuance to some of the responses.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I said it, just because that just adds so much more information to who is more likely to need it, who's more likely to not, and so that can inform us going forward too.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
very good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so would you consider moving into a rental unit if it was a lower monthly cost? About 10% of 4-bedroom owners said yes, and about 7% of 3-bedroom owners said yes. And that comes out to about, 6 and 13 homes. So there's like a few people, and you'll notice it on a few questions where it's about the same amount who keep saying yes. So that means that there might be like these 8 households who are like, yes, as soon as possible. Yes, I'm willing to do that. Yes, I'm willing to do that.
Could you know that?
Yeah,
Like, are the individual questions disaggregated, or could you actually see in an individual survey how those trends might line up?
I actually might be able to do that. I think I have it by the data by response, and I could see like if they answered yes to this, what did they answer to this?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I could definitely take a look. Yeah.
Right.
Good.
Yeah, and so similar to this one, but this one is if they'd be willing to move to Burlingame. It's like slightly less houses than the previous one, but I think there could be a few factors that go into that, especially like thinking about how important location was to people, and maybe, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, because it was about 7% of 4-bedroom houses and 5% of 3-bedroom houses, which is 4 and 9 houses who are saying yes. And again, yeah, that might be the same people who said yes to a rental unit, because maybe they're just really excited for this and are saying yes. So this one, we asked about average monthly housing costs. And so it's just an average by each. It follows like around where you'd expect, where studio's the lowest and it goes up each bedroom. But one thing I did think was interesting when I talked to APCHA about was the big jump between 2 and 3-bedroom homes, and then 3 and 4-bedroom homes are really close. That could be like a few things too, where maybe owners in 4-bedroom homes are more likely to have paid their homes off, and so they have less monthly housing expenses. So, so that is also something we probably could look into from home track data, but yeah. So I think it's important to just contextualize that and know that not all 3 and 4-bedroom owners are paying the same amount on average. So that makes sense.
I thought this was an interesting number, not that I can do the math right here, but, looking at a category 2 bedroom, that's kind of roughly where I'm at with HOA and mortgage, since I've refinanced before. But I was just wondering, if that's an average, is that end up being what people in category 2 and 3 ownerships are paying as well? I know I'm in a category 4, but it just made me wonder if that's information that's helpful to us when we're thinking about.
Category doesn't matter on what you're charged. Everybody's usually, the only difference in the majority of the HOAs, and some of them are, no, it doesn't matter if you're in a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom, you pay the same as everybody else. Some, it goes by square footage, but the category, very rarely, I think there's one property that I think category might come into play.
Yeah, no, and I'm just kind of thinking more in terms of the expense of the unit to begin with, and the incomes of the people who are able to get into a category. And does this sort of average expense mean well more than 30% of the income of some people in some of our projects? That's more of where I was trying to to take the, what does this mean if the average is 17, 19 on 2 bedrooms, and, you know, does it?
What is what percentage would it be for a household at a category 3 or a household in category 2?
Yeah, and, you know, because we've all danced around it because of various reasons, we're not able to dig into it as much as we'd like, but that is the capital reserves on a project. And is this 17, 19 for a category 2 or any of these other numbers sufficient to fund the capital reserves for the project and that unit the way it should be done? And, you know, so this is where it leads to other questions more than it leads to answers. But as we're trying to maintain the 30%, we're trying to figure out why people aren't keeping up their units as much as we'd like, and we're trying to keep them from being housing burdened. This sort of information of what HOAs and all your combined unit expenses are is a key factor beyond the purchase price. I mean, because purchase price, when we were down at 3% interest was one thing. Now we're at 6% interest, and you're adding these type of expenses on top of that for those category people. So it just really deserves some digging into.
It does, and I mean, I think that point along as part of this discussion, when you look at the impact of an interest rate on the payment, I mean, it's
doubled.
It's significant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So downsizing doesn't
It
necessarily
makes
mean.
it makes it harder in a high interest rate environment if somebody
Yeah.
has 2.75 on their mortgage and now they're looking at 6.5.
Right.
It
Yeah.
makes it that much more difficult.
Yeah, and, you know, having talked to someone who is interested in downsizing, who has a larger home, they're like, I don't want to take on new debt, and my income, because we're still working, won't allow me to qualify for any of the units you have. But I would downsize if I don't have to take on more debt, and you ignore the fact that my income is over any of the categories we have. So, you know, there's a lot of potential bargains or deals with the devils we'd have to consider to really open up some of these units. You know, anyhow. Because the lower costs here, but the question is, would you move if you had lower costs? And I think that applies to units as much as ownership as much as rental.
So this question, they asked if you would just be willing to sell your unit outright as its existing value without moving to another APCHA property. And so it's kind of similar numbers again compared to the other questions that we're asking about what type of property you'd be willing to move to. And 8% of 3-bedroom owners did say yes, 5% said for 4 bedrooms said yes. But then again, like there's this high amount of maybes, like the no's and the maybes for 4 bedrooms.
I think it depends on the cash.
Yeah.
The addial cash that we
Or the
would.
alternative.
I think that's
Yeah.
exactly what maybe tells
I
us,
think
is they're just
so.
like, well, what are you offering? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like,
Is it enough to move somewhere else?
And-
Or not?
exactly. And so that's what I think so many people say maybe, because they really want to know what's the number
That's
on
the
it.
take on the additional debt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we see that again in the open response. So people who took the survey, owners, they had a lot of opportunities for open response questions. And I just kind of categorized them by what they mentioned and how many people or how many times it was mentioned. And so the number one thing people brought up was, how much is this cash out? Is it enough to incentivize me to move? Is it enough? And kind of going into the third one too, capital gains, where it's just like, is this enough to cover what I've put into my property? Is this, yeah, it's kind of the how much. And then one thing to note is a lot of people, well, 13 people out of 484 responses, just high among the qualitative, but they wanted to emphasize that this was voluntary, right? Which it is, but I just think it's important to note how people are still bringing it up, if it's voluntary or not, and
Yeah.
and also 9 people even bringing up compliance in this survey too. So, and that just goes to show how hard you all are working on that all the time. But yeah, and then a few people bringing up other things as well, such as house swaps, senior housing, HOA dues being high.
I just thought of something, right?
Uh-oh.
This is going against everything we've talked about. But what about some of these where you've got, I mean, in theory, we're looking at somebody that is, kids have moved out of the house, they're Rachel's age, sorry, Rachel.
It's okay.
Right, and we want them to downsize to a smaller unit. You know, we talk about the cash out, but what about different regulations for those people? Right, where maybe they can move to Florida for 6 months and rent their place out for a period of time. You know,
You are
short-term
allowed to do
rentals.
that
Retired,
if
you
you're a
can do that
senior
now.
now. You can do that
Well,
now.
I'm thinking not just market rental, but a short-term, you know, not just what they're paying, but a place to generate a little income.
That's a big subject.
Yeah.
But
You're
we're
competing-
talking
you're
about
competing
writing a
with
check
the
to
market,
somebody to
yeah,
move or
that's good.
downsize and free up bedrooms, but maybe it's not so much writing the check as it is for a short period of time, 12 years or 15 years, however long they're gonna be that retiree until they move on to the next phase of their life, allowing them a little bit of latitude in a deed restriction. I'm just throwing that out there because
Yeah,
I just
hey,
popped into
no,
my
it's good to
brain.
brainstorm things. I don't-
I know it sounds kind of corny, but it,
Let me rent
that's
out my
options,
unit
right?
over the Christmas holiday, and
well,
I'll
that's
be
what I'm
able to
saying,
pay off
somebody
my
like
mortgage.
Cindy,
Plus some.
Wide.
right? No, that's exactly right.
One
And that's
weekend hour.
exactly the point. It was like, if somebody
Nobody would
downsized to
work.
be Cindy's neighbor and they're in a two-bedroom or one-bedroom unit,
Yeah.
And there would be no waiters
Like
or
that,
bartenders.
in conjunction with an agreement.
It was that weekend.
over
for you.
Christmas.
In 5 years.
yeah, exactly, move on in 5 to 10 years.
Like you gain that ability, instead of having to give somebody cash, you say, well, you can, for 5
Then all of a
years, and
sudden
then in
the
5
market is
years,
paying
right, you sign
and
a
not the
purchase agreement, in
community.
5 years, I don't know.
I think there's a
violation of
awful
the deed
lot of
restriction.
legal there.
Yeah.
You make the
You,
change, I'm
you-
just
no,
throwing
I
it
know,
out.
but you'd have to
HOAs
literally
are
change the
gonna prevent
contract
that
of the deed
stuff,
restriction
you
that
know.
people all entered into.
Well, but they're gonna enter a new deed restriction when they move downsize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true.
Any
I'm
other
just saying
questions?
as a way of the community not paying the cash, the market is, somebody else that's renting it, some
Right.
sucker from New York's coming in, sorry, and renting the unit for the winter, for the ski season or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all.
Allison?
Can we go back to slides 1 and question 1 and 2? I think actually we're missing Q1, but Q2 is,
No, Q1 was I just
first-
didn't put Q1.
okay.
Yeah, you want to go to Q2?
Throw it back to 1 for a second, please.
This is, Q1 is
No, one.
technically what's your bedroom
Okay.
size.
So, and I saw your note at the end where demographic data would be helpful, but this one, this is who said they would be open to it, right?
This one you're looking at right now is, this is just who
conglomerate
answered.
Okay, so Q2, I think would be helpful here, and maybe that is a crosstab, maybe you've already done it. So the percentage of people who said no here, because they literally have the same amount of people as like, this isn't a sign that people saying no are being bratty. This could be a sign that people saying no have 4 people living in a 3-bedroom, so they're not interested in a 2-bedroom, you
That's
know?
true.
So that would be a helpful crosstab for me, like of the people who could, and I think you
Yeah.
did say that,
Well,
right?
the only thing is we didn't ask how many people are currently
Are
living in their
their
unit
house.
in this. The
Right.
best we could do probably is look at data and home track and try to make some comparisons or create
Right.
context with other data.
And as you noted, like in a future survey, ask household size as one of the questions, right? I'm surprised that wasn't asked in this one. I thought it had been. So that's my Q2 point. It's not necessarily a brat meter. And then
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Q9, just to follow up, I think, on what Rachel was talking about, that is an interesting data point with last meeting's conversation about category income caps and where people fit. It is not surprising. Well, okay, so 2-bedroom to 3-bedroom is that huge jump in expenses. I think you are more likely to have a 2-income household in a 3-bedroom than a 2. You might in both. But I think you can take on those expenses. You probably have 2 working adults in a 3-bedroom, right? In a way that you can't guarantee, say that in a 2, where it might be single parent and kid. So I think maybe those households just do have more income, and that's not a cost burden.
It may also be that there's more category 3s in the higher, in categories 4s in the higher categories.
And the higher
But
bedroom counts.
Well, no, higher category bedroom counts, but category 4s and 5s, because more of the conversions of like Aspen Village, Mobile Home Park, Daisy Glen, they're all higher category.
I think that's correct, Cindy, that
For
we don't, we
price.
don't have a lot of low category, high bedroom stock, right?
We have very, very few.
Like
I
cat
mean,
one, 5
like a
bedrooms.
category 1, 4-bedroom, I think we have 2.
Yeah, so of course they're not spending, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying HOA is gonna be higher, everything's gonna be higher.
Yeah, what was my one last thing on this one? I lost it. I'm sorry, I lost it.
No, it's fine. But I mean, I think you both make good points. It's kind of dangerous to accept this graph at face value because there's so many other factors that go into how much your monthly expenses are. There's a lot of context there.
And I think my final takeaway from this data, which I love, is 4-bedroom plus people. I think just in general are our target audience and willingness. And I think in net bedroom gain, that NBG number that we brought up a while ago, like that actually is our ideal demographic for the most bedrooms gained. They seemed more willing from every angle to consider or straight up say yes to right-sizing. So I wonder if that is, if we make new regulations or we make a new program, it is targeted at current 4-bedroom owners.
I'd say 4 and 3 myself, but
I think our incentives package would have to be broader or less effective or different than the 4s who seem just more willing, maybe for a pilot.
You focus it on number of bedrooms reduced, right? So if you go from 3 to 1 and 4 to 2,
Right.
Correct, but the 3 to 1s weren't as willing to consider things like cash payouts. Like if we
Right.
have a way to test a program
Right.
and we know our demographic that's most willing to participate, they might be a good test.
right? But I
Community.
think if you've got 2 or 3 people and 3 bedrooms that would move to a 1-bedroom, that's a win, right? I mean, even if it's just a tiny amount of people, I guess what I'm saying
Yeah,
is,
don't
if we
limit.
gain 2 bedrooms, we gain 2 bedrooms.
I think the carrot is going to be different, and so if we wanted the tastiest treat for the amount of the tastiest
The
vegetable,
biggest bang for your buck.
so that's
see what
that's
you're
my
saying.
other impression.
You're right.
Yeah.
Because what you're getting is the opportunity to house more
Yeah.
people
Right.
well, it was
when that unit is open.
It was 19% of the people in 3 bedrooms who said yes, and then 19% of the people in the 4 bedrooms who said yes.
Would be willing.
Yeah, so I think both 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms are,
Yeah, I guess the net maybe.
But do you hear what I'm saying? It's not just the net gain, because the household we're moving into that unit is also a bigger number.
Right.
You know, so even if even if it's a 4 to 2 or a 3 to 1, you know, that's reducing for that household. But you're opening up a 4-bedroom,
Right.
which is one more than you're opening up in a 3-bedroom.
Right.
So you're getting,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
Also,
more in total.
if someone's moving from, like you said, and I work with these people, for a family of 4 from a 1-bedroom to a 4-bedroom, eventually as the shuffle works out, APCHA overall got a 1-bedroom, one extra 1-bedroom out of it, because we have so many people who are overburdened in their housing, you know? So there's also that final net gain. Like what did we put on the market for APCHA, current non-residents of APCHA? And it might be still pretty low.
Well, you lost a 2-bedroom, right, in the exchange? You might have freed up a 1-bedroom, but you had to give up a unit to get a
Right.
unit.
Well, but I was thinking that too, like, how does this affect the churn? You know, like, do we have enough qualified demand for 4 and 3s who
I think the net
are gonna be
bedroom
the only
gain
ones
is
who
the
are gonna,
biggest.
you know.
biggest
I just assume those families are somehow in affordable housing of some kind, or else how are they making it, you know? So as we do this, and I do think our family should be living in comfortable, real-life living situations, that's, I don't know.
I don't know if that's true, though. I mean, I look at like Carson, who was in free market rentals with a family of 4, you know, for a long time.
Yeah,
There's many other
I think that's changed.
yeah, I mean, it's good to get in.
Really like each other.
Baby cried, you put in the bathroom.
You know,
It's true.
this is really good information, and thank you for how you've put it together for us. I think it's obvious to all of us that there's follow-up questions or follow-up, how do you dig down to really get more exactitude? And find out where's the money, if the cash bonus is $100,000 a bedroom that people want, or whatever it is. So we're going to be following up on this, getting the demographics and all sorts of good stuff. And we'll all need a little time to think about what else we really need to then construct a program around. But I am going to ask the question I asked before, is that we need to think, what is the benefit for doing this? And are there limitations on who should be there? Is it a new 4-bedroom's been opened up? We spent $150,000 to help them move or get them to move or whatever it is, and the family that wins the lottery has 17-year-old twins who are going to leave and go to college next week. Is that the community benefit for the $150,000 spent? Are we just redoing? We already have rules about when you cannot buy units if you're within 10 years of retirement or something like that. So that we are limiting that community subsidy for a limited benefit, which would only be a potential of a 10-year work life there. So I think it is worth at least asking ourselves the question, and to be able to justify it to the public and justify it to city and county boards if we're asking for a new $1 million fund to do these buy downs with from both entities, of are there restrictions or are there qualification differences for getting into a bought down unit than versus a regular APCHA unit? Is it something that we need to maximize the number of potential working years or working people within it or not? I don't know, but I just feel the question has to be asked. What is the community benefit for how much expenditure?
Well, and I think that's why, one of the things that I had said is, this is ultimately up to the city, right? But to me, I'm curious, is there one person, 2 people, 3 people, or is there somebody that would say, okay, I've got, maybe I'm a single person living in a 4-bedroom home, it requires maintenance, upkeep,
glad to move,
right?
glad to move.
If I could get into Burlingame in a 1-bedroom, I would take it. There may be nobody, right? There's certainly not a majority that want to do that, but I think for me to answer that question of how should we be spending resources, I think if you offer a priority on those and you have nobody that's willing to do it, you're no worse for wear. You just put somebody in the unit anyway.
Right.
Right. And so I almost think that's the
I'm agreeing with you entirely if
Yeah.
it's simply a priority and we're not starting to talk about cash and moving expenses and all these other things, which we don't know
right. Because
where.
at the end of the day, I agree with you. You open up a 4-bedroom, you've taken up a 1-bedroom, somebody else, what have you really bought? You've got more people in bedrooms, which is good, but.
And it is good.
Right, but from a community benefit, is that where we should be spending resources? So that's why I still think that's a great sort of starting point.
And I'm not trying to
Yeah.
object,
Well,
I'm just saying I think it's worth considering at the end of the day.
I almost wonder if it's like our growth management competition, right?
Yeah.
Like, people put on the line what it is they want, and we open it all at the same time and figure out how do you score these to best benefit the community.
I would almost agree with you, that that's not a bad idea, because I can't tell you how many times we have somebody who's a household of 3, but their kid's 18. They say, I need to win a unit because my kid turns 19 and I can't use him anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So
But you would score that, right? Like, you'd get extra points for having
your kids are younger, you get a higher score,
you know,
or something like that, yeah.
So, I don't know. So I'm just, there's one way just to.
I just thought I'd bring it up since we have a policy analyst in the room.
I will say though, Ms. Rachel, I think when you're talking about qualification side, that opens that whole can of worms about how do we favor
Or what do we do? And it really comes up because
that's separate, right?
Yeah.
The person moving a person out is separate from how you move somebody in. So if we're going to create a whole new how you move who gets to move in, now you've opened the can of worms of who gets to qualify.
Right.
That's why your strategy makes more sense, setting aside certain bids, and we talked about not everyone, like one a month or one every 5th 1-bedroom that comes up. The priority ends as actually downsizers, right? Because then actually it cost us nothing. We gave them no incentive except for first dibs.
Right.
And we have no say on who's replacing them. We don't have to start playing that game. It's the same people who would always be able to bid on a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom,
They still have to
2-bedroom.
qualify.
But like you're saying, I wonder how many people right now would take a new loan at that price.
And I
Blah
mean,
blah blah. Yeah.
the city, if the city wanted to say it's city only, right? City housing to city housing, fine, right? I mean,
Yeah, no, I'm just asking the
Yeah.
broader question of, is there?
What are we getting?
What are we getting,
Yeah.
especially if we're starting
Yeah.
to put money and not just units on the table? Every time you take a 1-bedroom out, it's a single or a couple who can't bid on that unit.
Exactly.
And
Right.
you're taking care of someone who's already been here 30 years and
Right.
has
Right.
built up equity.
Yeah.
And you're saying their assets don't matter anymore. They're gonna get a lower
Right.
price unit even after they sell their home because we're filling bedrooms. And
Yeah.
I'm for this. I'm not against
Yeah.
it. I'm
No,
just
no,
saying, how do you try your best to make it fair and beneficial?
So I need to go, but
Yeah.
I just would like to say that, like, I would give direction on the next step, which to me might be more focus group style stuff or a little more dug-in analysis of the questions that we raised.
Yeah.
I'd also be interested in just, would some of these people take incentives to rent bedrooms? I mean, we have a seasonal employee demand as well. And I don't know if there's an opportunity here to help bridge those. So, but I have to go, but thank you.
yeah.
I mean,
Thank
our
you.
people can rent somebody at a ski company and get a ski pass out of that deal without
Yeah.
Yeah,
violating anything. The one thing interesting to me was, I mean, this is good information, but 60% of these units are 50 and over. So within 20 years of retirement, right? That's a big number to me. 35% of them are 60 and over. So,
You know, we saw very similar numbers before. And the thing is, people move to lower elevation because they can't breathe. They
Right.
move to be closer to where their children
Right.
have settled, and they die. You know, there's just a lot of movement that happens as opposed to staying here forever
Yeah.
for
Well, no,
6 months of
that's-
snow.
no, I get it. This isn't gonna get any smaller,
No, nothing's
right?
getting
The
smaller.
empty bedrooms aren't getting any smaller or any less.
That's a great point.
good. Well, let's keep it moving here. We're
Almost to the executive.
almost to executive session.
What is happening next? Just to wrap that up, does staff need? What will you do next? What will you do
We'll
next?
talk about it and try to work out what type of policy, direction that you guys want us to be. I've got some notes of what you're looking at and maybe get some ideas from you of what might make sense to move forward with
Okay.
on these.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it sounded a little bit like maybe seeing if there's a way to contact directly the 4-bedroom people who are already interested in doing something,
A little pilot.
you know, as,
Send maybe
No,
just
no,
a
those, all the ones that came in, they're all anonymous.
right, so there's
Right.
no
Yeah.
way.
So maybe you just send an email and say.
To all 4-bedroom owners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, or something
If
like that.
you're interested in this, yeah,
interested in this,
that we could do.
Yeah,
If they're
that's,
passionate about it, we'll respond.
Yeah.
So.
yeah, that's all I'm saying, is
Yep.
that let's try to follow up with
Yeah.
that group. It's
Great
on the
idea.
way.
Great idea.
I move to move into executive session to obtain legal advice from APCHA's
No, wait a
attorney.
minute, because he's not here. It's a different thing, and it'll be a 5-minute discussion.
Okay.
It says tentative, but it is.
I move to move into executive session to discuss the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real, personal, or other property interest under CRS Section 24.6.4024A.
I'll second that.
Well done.
Okay, John,
Aye.
Carson.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Rachel.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll
So
move to
we'll have a
executive
couple of
session.
minutes so people can leave, and I know that Maddie wants to take off too.
Wait a second, can't we have an extended meeting?
Recording stopped.